call this meeting to order at 1 p.m. In accordance with the Government Emergency Administration Act, PA 100-06-0640, the Rails Board of Directors find an in-person meeting is not practical and prudent and believes it is in the best interest of Rails to hold the virtual meeting to perform the essential business. Everyone, please remember to unmute yourself before you speak and say your name when you're making a motion or a comment. All votes will be by roll call. Thank you. Emily, can you please call roll?
Sure. Sue Busenbark. Here. Michael Campbell. Haley Cox.
Here.
Percy Harris. Diane Hollister.
Here.
Chris Kenny.
Here.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Jenna Namek-Luisi.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Becky Spratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Pepin.
She's not unmuted.
Oh, I saw her. I see you, Beth. Alex Vincina.
Here.
I have a quorum.
Thank you. Now for recognition of guests and announcements. We will handle guests and public comments at the same time. Let's start with guests here in Burr Ridge.
Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Does Monica not?
Monica Harris, Rails.
Not there for, oh no, Mark's, well, he's not at the meeting, so I guess he's,
Well, but isn't Emily? Oh, but she's already talked.
yeah. Emily, you're a guest too, thank you.
Yes, but I'll read from Zoom.
Any public comments in Burr Ridge? Moving on to our guest in East Peoria.
Hello, Kendall Orson, Rails and RSA. I am currently alone, but I am monitoring to see if anybody shows up. And I have no comments.
No comments. Thank you. Thank you, Kendall. How about the Illinois State Library?
Oh, there we go.
Good afternoon. This is Gwen Harrison at the Illinois State Library, and I'm here by myself.
Thank you, Gwen. Emily, will you read the names of the guests who are participating via Zoom?
Yes.
Can't hear you, Emily.
Should I, yeah, maybe say we can't hear.
Hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Dan Bostrom, Ann Slaughter, Mark Hatch, Brian Hubble, Mary Witt, and Jamie Wilson. And Dennis Krieger. And everyone?
Hold on. Hey, technology.
Joe Philippus, Dan Bostrom, Ann Slaughter, Mark Hatch, Brian Hubble, Amy Wilkie, Mary Witt.
That was better.
Okay.
Thank you. If Emily has not read your name, please state your name and your affiliation or put it in the Zoom chat so then she can read it and we can add your name to the minutes. We are handling public comment via Zoom or by previous submission to Emily. Emily, did you receive any comments?
I did not.
Does anyone have any public comments at this time? Okay, if none, we'll move on to agenda item 5, adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second for adoption of the agenda?
Say your name.
Alex moves.
Jenna
Becky
Namakuisi, so moved.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Emily, I think that Alex moved and Becky seconded.
Thank you.
Next time, Jenna.
And I'll do a roll call.
Okay. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Michael King, oh, I'm sorry, Bailey Cox.
Yes.
Percy, join us yet? Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Peppin, and Alex Messina.
Yes.
I don't see Beth anymore.
Yeah, she was there.
She
Now she's
was.
gone.
She was there.
Moving on, may I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the August
There she
20,
is.
of the August 28th, 2020 Rails Board regular meeting?
Now, Jenna.
This is Jenna Namakuisi, so moved.
You do second, Alex.
Oh.
Oh, Scott.
Okay, moved by Jenna, seconded by Scott. Emily, will you please call roll?
Bailey Cox,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Peppin, Alex Messina.
Yes.
She's gone. Oh, no, there she is.
Okay, moving on to 6.1.2. May I have a motion for approval of minutes of the August 28th, 2020 Rails closed session meeting?
So moved, McCone Chase.
Moved by Sarah,
Second, Hallie Cox.
Alec, seconded by Hallie. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Bailey Cox,
Yes.
Percy Harris, Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Peppin,
Yes.
Alex Messina.
Yes.
Okay, Emily, thank you. Next up is Mr. Krieger. Jim, it's all yours.
Thank you. I presume you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is the Rails financial report for August of this year, or the second month of our fiscal year 21. And the highlights are we have 13 million in unassigned general fund cash. That would fund about a little over 14 months of operations. Our revenues, delivery operations have resumed on June 15th, and our administrative employees are continuing to work primarily from home. Our revenues through August were nearly 1.7 million below budget, as we've received no APC grant revenues yet. Our interest income is also well under budget. We budgeted a 1% rate, and the rates now are about 0.2%.
Like the worst.
The We are uncertain of the revenue stream from the state for the area and per capita grant due to their the effects of the pandemic, and we're not sure what's going to be the impact on our budget this year from that. We should be receiving about $1.9 million, our federal portion of our grant, probably in late October or November. That's typically when that amount comes. Our expenditures through August were $312,854 budget. We're lower than budget in pretty much in all major cost categories. Contractual services are the most below budget, about $85,000. Much of this is due to just timing impacts and not receiving or paying the bills applicable to the month yet. Travel expenditures through August were almost $20,000 under budget already in just 2 months, and likely to remain well below budget. And as we've been talking about, we're, to the extent possible, we've been deferring major expenditures until the state funding situation becomes a bit clearer. Our personnel expenses are also below budget, mostly in the fringe benefit category. A major change for next year is that Limerick has decided, of which I am a board member, have decided to switch carriers from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Aetna for next year, and this will enable Limerick to hold its healthcare premiums for calendar year 2021 to those that were experienced in 2020. Had we stayed with Blue Cross Blue Shield, we were looking at about a 5% increase in the HMO costs and a double-digit increase in the PPO. So we thought this change was well warranted. Our special revenue funds remain active with the census and the L2 replacement project. The L2 platform has become live, and we'll be making enhancements on that for the next several months. The census program also may be extended past September 30th, but that will probably be subject to a court appeal. So we'll see what happens with that. And that's pretty much it. Can I answer any questions?
I have a question. Becky Stratford.
Yes, Becky.
I think it's because I'm new. So I totally agree with the fact that we are deferring capital expenditures. But since I haven't been on the board for very long, I don't know if we have a capital plan where we have a list of the things that, like at LaGrange, we have like every system and when we expect it will fail and how much. Do we have that kind of documentation here so new board members are aware of the things we are deferring?
We kind of. Do you want to talk about it, Jim, or do you want me to?
I thought Mark might be able to. I thought there was a valuation of all our equipment done at one point, and when it would when it might need replacement. I
don't need the answer today.
Yeah.
So I think that that is a good thing to put on the agenda for next month to look at.
Yeah, I just want to know what we're deferring. That's all.
Yeah. And actually,
this year is probably a delivery vehicle that we normally budget for the replacement of delivery vehicles, 6 or 7 a year, and this year we do not have that in the budget.
Okay.
The only thing in the budget is some computer items, I believe.
We also have a list, for lack of a fancier word, of, we only own 2 buildings now. So, and we've updated a lot of a lot of things here at Burr Ridge. So we do, but not everything. Not everything is updatable, like the HVAC.
Yes.
But we do have a spreadsheet that shows all that we can use.
Yeah, that would be great, just to know.
Yeah. And we don't actually have I mean, we have money that we put aside, that the board voted to put aside a number of years ago. I know you were on the board, Paul. I
Yes.
don't remember. I don't think probably anybody else was at the time.
I'm the last one.
Last man
Sorry,
standing.
that was, and
Literally.
it's not an actual, it's just, it's
Yeah.
money that we reaped from the sale of real estate that we put aside
For
to
major-
serve as a capital fund, but it's not really
Earmarked.
it's very fungible, so to speak. So-
I'm just more, because I'm all for deferring these costs, but I want to know, as the person who's responsible for the votes on this, what we're deferring, that's all.
It's the vehicles.
Perfect.
mostly. You put so many miles on that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
We have 2.4 million in our capital projects fund balance that's set aside for future capital expenditures.
That was all I had.
Jim, not a question, but I would just like to commend you and the rest of the Limerick board for making the decision. I think it's a very good decision, both for staff and for the organizations. And I really, since we're all about transparency and the interest of full disclosure, my wife happens to be on the Limerick board too. So actually, I should say that part, but I still think the board did a really, really, really good job for Rails and actually all the other members of Limerick.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was excited too.
Okay. If there is no further questions, we can move on to the approval of expenditures. The listing is shown at the end of the financial report. Our expenditures for the month of August were $743,589.70. Are there any questions on the details? And this requires a vote.
Everything.
Okay,
requires a roll call.
thanks, Jim. Any discussions or questions for Jim? None? Okay. May I have a motion for approval of the expenditures for August 2020?
So moved, Alex Hansen.
Alex moves, looking for a second.
Beth Tuppen.
Thank you, Beth. Emily, will you please call roll?
Yes. Kelly Cox,
Yes.
Percy Harris,
Yes.
Diane Hollister, Diane,
Oh, there she is. She's
Yes.
trying.
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
No, that's Jenna. Oh, Paul, it's you.
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Sprafford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Tuppen,
Yes.
Alex Messina.
Yes.
So Percy's there, we just can't see him.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
So we go on to reports, and I guess I get to fill in here for the board president's report. Many of you may know that I'm a junior college student now that I've retired. And I just wanted to thank all those school librarians out there, those academic librarians, because I've got 2 term papers to do this. And I appreciate all your efforts, believe me. So that's it for my report.
It's a good one, though.
It is.
Hopefully Michael will be back with us at the next meeting. Let's go over the board committees. Jenna?
Hi, thank you. So the Advocacy Committee met last Thursday, September 17th, and we had a great meeting. We had 3 main orders of business that we addressed. The first was our ILA virtual conference program on learning ecosystems with school libraries, public libraries, and trustees. Then we talked a little bit about the ILA Trustees Forum and what might be coming down the pike in terms of plans that they have for the next year. And then we talked a little bit about the ILA Advocacy Committee and Public Policy Committee updates. So we spent most of our time talking about, we had a great conversation about our ILA conference panel. And we landed in a couple of really good places. Deirdre has volunteered to moderate the panel, which is going to take place on Wednesday, October 21st at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We hope that everybody will be able to join us for that. And our panel is growing. We have confirmed some new folks since the last time that we met. So the panel will consist of Michael Campbell, myself, Amy Walsh, who is a librarian in Joliet, Christy Samandi, who is the Association of Illinois School Library Educators president. And we're also hoping to secure a school administrator. I have made an ask of one of my school administrators, and I'm waiting to hear back from her. But we're excited. We will have a very robust panel. Deirdre and I will now be putting our heads together once we confirm our school administrator on putting together some slides and content and some questions and more of the lilt of how the panel will unfold. And our wonderful advocacy committee members have volunteered to take a look at our slides and make sure that we're all on the right track, and we're feeling really positive. We think it's going to be a really valuable panel. Moving on to the ILA Trustees Forum. We had hoped to hear a little bit more from the Trustees Forum in terms of special and particular engagement opportunities they're going to be offering over the next year. What we got is a response from someone at ILA of just sort of what the regular trustee year looks like. So we're hoping to get a little bit more information about how we can become engaged with that and a little bit more specifics about that. And then Deirdre gave us an update on kind of what's going on with the ILA Advocacy Committee and also public policy. And so we got to hear a little bit more about that. Something that we're planning, we're not going to have a meeting in October, but something that we're looking ahead to for November, in addition to decompressing about our panel, we're going to be looking at what advocacy opportunities might exist between following up on our school library approaches. What opportunities might exist to advocate between high school librarians and academic librarians? So we talk a lot about public library collaborations and school library collaborations K through 12. But what would it look like if we were talking about advocacy opportunities between high school librarians and academic librarians? So we're looking forward to hearing more from Sarah about that and different ways that we can sort of start that conversation. So I'm really excited to be the chair of our advocacy committee. I'm really excited about our work ahead, and we've got a lot of great things planned. So thank you very much. Advocacy committee, please chime in if I misrepresented anything or if there was something that I didn't include.
I have something I'd like to add. Thank you, Jenna.
Yes.
I think when we get past the ILA and the IO conferences, I think we've done a lot of good work with school libraries in particular, but I think we also need to engage with Hallie, our special library representative, and talk about how we might advocate jointly for all types of libraries, or how we can be better advocates for special libraries, because I know you guys are kind of in a tough spot as well. So.
Thank you for adding that, Deirdre. I agree. That sounds like great work for our committee, and Hallie, we look forward to working with you on that.
Likewise. So reach out anytime you guys are ready.
Okay, thank you.
Jenna, thank you for the report, and I know later on this meeting we're going to hear some more about the ILA Trustees Forum, so from Percy and Joe, so looking forward to that. For the Consortia Committee, Paul.
We have not met, sir.
Next month, right?
Yes, October, yes.
Oh, I guess it's me for the next two here. The Executive Committee, we did meet. We're looking at replacement board member, and we should be reporting back at the next board meeting with the candidates. We have some great candidates, and we have a lot of work ahead of us.
I think our meeting in beginning of October, next week,
it's
beginning of October.
Monday, the first Monday in October.
Right, in the afternoon, right.
Yes. The Policy Committee did not meet. the Resource Sharing Committee.
Yes, the Resource Sharing Committee met. Sharm Runke is the chair of that. We met this past Monday, and it was a really good meeting. We talked a lot about how the pandemic has highlighted the importance of virtual resources and virtual or e-resource sharing. They reiterated their goals that they established last year to increase the statewide culture of resource sharing, improve awareness of resource sharing, and provide services for the unserved. So I think we've certainly been making some progress on the providing services for the unserved. The committee was really stressing the importance to promote not only the benefits of resource sharing, but even the fact that it exists, because not everybody knows about it. So it was a very good meeting.
Thank you. Universal Service Committee, Sue?
Thanks, Tom. We did not meet.
Okay.
But I think we will meet soon, Sue. I'll be in touch with you about that.
Okay, just let me know. I'll make
Yep.
arrangements. I can come up to Burr Ridge if you want me to, or however you want to do it.
I'll reach out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks to you all. On to Deidre with the Rails report.
Yes, thank you. Let's see. So you have a few reports that are part of the Rails report, including at the end the LSAP/consortia reports. I don't know why, and Adobe was being mischievous apparently when Emily was putting these on the website, but you have multiple copies of CCS and one copy of Rock River and not anybody else.
She emailed them though.
It's nothing personal.
She emailed the new ones since.
Did she? Okay, thanks, Emily. I wasn't sure.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah. So anyway, we just thought you might like to see how the consortia use the money that the board approves, going to the LSAP. Going back to my report, on at the very beginning of it. So the Realm study continues. This is the reopening archives, libraries, and museums. There is at the meeting this week, there was a lot of discussion about the need for context. That the focus of the study obviously is on the library materials and the transmission of the virus, but that's not the only way that the virus is transmitted, and that the main thing that people want to know, which is what's the infection level that makes the transmission important, is unknown. So they had a conversation about how that is, people are, there's a lot of questions in the field about the field being, us, about the relevance of this hyper focus when there's all these other ways that the virus can be transmitted. So unfortunately, it costs a lot of money to do this testing, and they don't have a lot of money to do a lot of different kinds of testing. But hopefully there's a literature review that's underway right now, and hopefully we might find that there are actual studies being done, not because we don't know of any of the infection rate, infection level. So it's still, a very uncertain thing. But I'm, and as I say in my report, we went with 7 days. It was, Greg McCormick was thought that was the right number. Heartwound is using that number, but if you look at reports of what libraries are doing around the country and around the world in particular, because Paul and I have had a number of conversations about this, it's really literally all over the map. So
It truly, Paul Mills speaking, it truly is. I mean, I attended a webinar where the director of the Bremen, Germany Public Library District was talking about reopening, and this was in June, and her public health department in Germany advised her to quarantine items for an hour, was the recommendation they received. And I think Deirdre and I have talked around the United States, there's libraries that are doing zero quarantine. And I don't think anyone's doing longer than 7 at this point. But my understanding was that Realm wasn't looking at actual transmission. They were just looking at how long the virus actually lives on the material after they infect it with a certain amount.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, because,
There
no,
was some discussion about whether they should look at that.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's not enough money.
Plus, the information that they're providing to us about how long the virus will live on various materials is the information that we probably most need within the library community. While I don't think it's necessarily likely that anyone's going to catch virus from library materials, it's still within the realm of possibility, and I think that providing that information to us to help us make those informed decisions is it's actually a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot of information, and it's really useful.
Yes.
So, you want to go?
No, go ahead.
This is Becky Spradford. So I side with Paul that I feel like we're being overly cautious, and I'm doing that from a scientific background. Just quick background. My husband is a doctor, and he's been living with all of this, and he does not want to go on the record. But when we talked about the study and I showed him the study, he's concerned of a couple things. The transmission issue is one. He says when you look at the study from a scientific standpoint, that the virus is alive on the materials does not mean it's alive in a state in which it can actually infect someone.
It is.
Okay.
The question, the way they're doing the testing, it is a live virus, but the question is how much.
Right, the infection, right, exactly, there's a question there. The other thing I have is, I feel like it's overly cautious because we've never lived in a zero risk life anyway. Like the flu is transmittable on books, and we've never gone to these lengths for the flu. And so there's lots of diseases that are transmittable. So I feel like 7 is overly cautious. We were doing 3 or 4 and everything was fine. I do know that I've heard from some smaller libraries, I can't even imagine bigger libraries, that is a lot to try to keep all these things straight. And it's costing a lot of staff time and I think it's overly cautious. And I think there's enough science to support not going the full 7 days. I would prefer to get materials in people's hands and let people decide. Like, for example, most libraries put them in brown bags. So even if they were only for 3 days, you're getting it in a brown bag. You can choose as a person to leave it for 3 more days in the brown bag yourself. I also am hearing stories from libraries where the books come out of quarantine and somehow patrons are looking at them because they're like somehow partially in public, and then they're going on the hold shelf and they're not being quarantined 7 more days. So I feel like it's all sort of nebulous anyway.
Yeah, this is Scott. I would agree with that, Becky. I think that and I'm not saying anybody's done anything wrong.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think that Rails kind of has a bit of a hammer here. if Rails says they won't haul materials unless they've been quarantined for 7 days, it's forcing all the libraries to quarantine for 7 days if they want to have delivery, which they absolutely need. And I think the level of protection that's being done for is something that all those other libraries that Rails is serving don't have the luxury to do. Like they can't operate their libraries, in the zero chance of being infected mode. That's just not how life works right now. And the other thing I'm hearing, and I'd like to hear, I guess, you to weigh in on this, is I've heard from several directors, well, what is the sunset plan for this? Like what would need to happen for it to come back down from 7 days? So I think that would be important to address, because is it going to be at 7 days until there's a vaccine? Is it going to be 7 days until there's a vaccine that most people have had? Is it going what's the plan? And because they're kind of hating it, and they want to see that pinpoint of light in the distance that they just can focus on to get to.
Of course. I would say that we don't have enough information to make a plan yet, unfortunately. I love planning, but in my view, though, that as the data grows, we will get more information that shows us that this is either overly cautious or the right amount of cautious or not cautious enough. You know, I think one of the things that, the big things that the IMLS, that the group is worried about is what's happened to the CDC over the past couple of weeks, that because they didn't fully vet what was, you know, for lots of reasons, what didn't, you know, fully vet what was going out. It was, you know, it was wrong, it was whatever. So then, you know, your whole, your credibility goes away too. I mean, there's just, you know, one of the things that, one of the other things we discussed in the meeting and that, you know, Monica and I talked about briefly is that this, again, that this kind of hyper focus on materials, and it is important. Obviously I agree with you, Sarah. That's why I'm on this committee, but there's other ways you can get the virus, and it sort of keeps us from talking about, I mean, in libraries, like, you know, ventilation systems or just people being too close to each other, or the nostril patrol that, you know, people don't wear the mask properly, all those different things. And what you're talking about, you know, Becky, too, is just not being careful in terms of what happens to items.
Right.
You know, again, I will say, we don't have, there's no certainty. We're just trying to do the best thing that we can do. You know, happy to talk about that at any time. And
well, Deidre, when you were mentioning the other ways that someone could catch COVID, I would even flip that on its head and say, at least as of about a month ago was the last time I did a scan for anything, there were still 0 traceable cases that someone got it from a surface. Like, every contact trace that's happened in the United States, they've been able to trace that person back to a time when they were in a room with someone unmasked, breathing their air, and that person had COVID. And that's the clear, you know, the clear exposure. So there's zero provable cases of anybody ever catching it from the surface.
There was just a scientific report that said that, yes.
it's hard to prove a negative, though, right?
But I mean, the luxury of that kind of I don't know what, conservativeness, you know, with COVID is something that I'm not sure most libraries are getting away with. So it bothers me a little bit that Rails can get away with it, I guess.
So there's a couple concerns, and people are posting this publicly on Facebook. There are libraries that have simply said they can't meet this and aren't doing it.
Yes.
I mean, that's, you know, that's already been, that's can be publicly searchable. I won't, you know, point out anything in particular. But, you know, in a literature review you had mentioned, I know I was reading our WebMD article, a chief of pediatric infectious diseases at UC Davis Children's Hospital said it's highly unlikely you'd catch it from a service. A gentleman who is a PhD professor of microbiology, biochemistry, and molecular genetics at the New Jersey School of Medicine says, you know, this, and he was talking about earlier studies that were done, that the chances of transmission through inanimate surfaces is very small, and only in instances where an infected person coughs or sneezes on the surface and someone else touches that surface after the cough or sneeze within an hour or two, which kind of dovetails with what, you know, the German public health system is saying. The other thing I thought was really interesting, I did send it to Deirdre, a public library director did a deeper analysis of what the Realm Studies was doing.
Afraid I didn't understand all of those.
Well, and that's for someone who truly knows math should vet this. I am not, you know, I've not done logarithm work since high school. But, you know, he noted when you break down the logarithms, and he went up through the 6-day tests that the Realm folks have done. He showed the amount of virus that was gone after the amount that they put on, which of course is a question how much Realm's actually putting on, was 97.24% was gone after an hour, 99.31% was done after 2 days, 99.85 after 3 days, after 4 days, 99.98, then after 6 days, 99.97. So, which was interesting, but, you know, it seems like it's a very minor change from that. And of course, they didn't do any studies beyond the 6 days. But, you know, and he said, actually, I think the state he's in, they're actually just doing a 3-day quarantine.
And, you know, if it helps, I can give you a long-term study of a fairly large medical practice where they are dealing with asymptomatic and COVID patients. My husband's practice is huge. It's in Westchester. And they have never closed one day. They have asymptomatic and symptomatic COVID patients. He wears a mask no different than this with a filter. He literally has his hands in people's mouths, or, you know, who then he finds out have COVID. Not a single nurse or doctor in the entire practice has gotten COVID. And that's like touching the actual virus, okay, and washing their hands after in a person's mouth. So I realize that I live at a higher level of threat every day than everyone else, so I try not to impose that upon people and respect that people's distance. But like, for example, like Scott was saying and Paul was saying, there are libraries who this is really difficult for. And I feel like putting the book in a paper bag allows the patron to go at their own level of risk, because you can leave it in that paper bag for like a few extra days yourself. And I feel like that allows, we can say, hey, okay, you guys can do 3 days, but we let patrons know if they want to do 4 more days, it's in a bag.
And I would note, Dr. Ezeki, who is there, the director of the Illinois Public Health Department, in an interview in June, there was a time when folks were wiping down groceries that they bought, bought from the store. She said there's no need to do that.
And she's a LaGrange Library patron too.
Oh, and yes.
Not to beat that horse, but when library materials are returned to my libraries, I'll just use my libraries as an example. Like the most virulent they could possibly be is when they come through the slot into the book drop, and the staff have to take them out of there to transfer them to somewhere to quarantine. So that's as close as a person could get to a virulent library material, and they wear gloves and they wash their hands a lot and they wear masks and they're fine. So, like, if we're protecting the drivers and the sorters, well, they're even if we don't quarantine, they're hours and days later is when they're going to be touching those things. So, it seems fairly unnecessary to me.
Anything else?
Oh, well, you know what? We'll come back to you at the next meeting. See, I mean, I don't know what you want me to do about this. I mean,
This is Jenna. Can I just chime in with the school library perspective?
Yep.
I think it gets a little trickier when we're talking about school libraries. I totally understand and appreciate the idea of if we put library materials in a paper bag, then patrons can decide whether they want to quarantine them for additional days. Working in a school setting, I'm functioning as in loco parentis, as are all of my colleagues, and I think it just gets a little bit trickier for us because we are making decisions on what's safe and what's not for our students because their parents are not here to help to guide their decisions. So I think for me, I feel like there's extra responsibility, and now that I am down from a 2-person to a 1-person library team, meaning me, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on for me to guide the decisions and how we're going to handle library materials for the whole school. And we are a very cautious school anyway. And for myself, I would rather operate out of an overabundance of caution than not enough, because we are struggling every day to make sure that our students and our faculty and our staff and our learning community stays safe and healthy. And if I hand a 1st grader a book in a paper bag and tell him that he's got to wait to take it home and talk to his parents about whether or not he can take it out of the bag, I just don't know that that's going to work in a school setting, given the added responsibility we have of caring for children and guiding their choices day to day. So I'm struggling with the realm study and having the study being called into question because I'm being looked to provide guidance on that. And so far I've told my school administration that the realm study and that project is really the gold standard for how libraries are going to be operating, and we are using that information to guide our decisions. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, that it might vary from library type to library type. For me, it's really hard to implement the quarantine procedures and to quarantine materials for 7 days as a solo operation, trying to circulate materials to a learning community of almost 700 people. So I just wanted to put it out there that it gets complicated when we look beyond the public libraries and into school settings.
Jenna, can I address that though? I think you can always do more. I think that should be each local group's decision. I think some of us are struggling with the mandatory minimum. You can always change your rules to be more strict. So I think there's the difference. I think that's an excellent point about schools, though.
Jenna, I had a quick question. Are your stacks closed right now? Or when the students come visit the library, can they browse the stack?
So it's a good question. So our library space is being repurposed this year into 5th grade classrooms because we are de-densifying our classrooms, and we had to make sure that we allow for socially distanced in-person learning. We're on a hybrid model right now. So my lower school and middle school students are here from 8 to 12, and my high school students are here in the afternoons from 12:30 to 4:30. Because we can't have everybody in the same classroom, the library has been turned into 3 5th grade classrooms. So the library space is only accessible by those 5th grade students and by faculty and staff. It is not an open space, and all of the library materials handling while it's in the library space has to go through me. People are placing online holds through our library management system, and I'm delivering things to classrooms. So we're avoiding the people coming in and browsing and touching materials, but then I'm struggling with, if we let kids check out 2, 3, 4 books at a time, and you've got classes of 30 kids who are doing that, that's a lot for one person to manage all of that quarantining. Then the other question becomes, what type of guidance am I going to be providing to classroom teachers about their classroom libraries? Am I only responsible for the library materials when they are in the physical library space, or am I responsible for providing guidance on how we're handling them once they leave the library and go into classrooms and go into homes? Because if kids have library materials in the classroom, and I'm reading the latest Dog Man book and it's really exciting, and my friend asks me if they can see it, my inclination is going to be to say, sure, and I'm handing it to my friend. It's not just me who's handling it. And that's just so much about what we're doing in pandemic learning goes against children's better nature to want to share and provide materials to each other. So that's the long answer to your question, Scott. The library space is not accessible by all people, but the materials are to be made accessible to my entire community.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's very complicated, obviously. That is a complete understatement. But I think that it is good for this board to discuss this and to hear about the different perspectives, especially among library types. And I mean, some people think it's not strict enough. Some people think it's too strict. Some people do think it's exactly the right amount of strictness. But I think it's something that we should keep talking about and hearing, getting feedback from members. I don't want, and obviously the realm study is ongoing. Vaccine work is ongoing. I wish I had more answers.
My concerns with the realm studies, they're only looking at one component. They're not looking at transmission, they're not looking at infection. So for what they're doing that one part, but they're not doing those other parts that are critical. And I'm not aware of anyone else doing any other studies out there. But I would love to, and I mentioned this to Deirdre, I'd love to see the realm study. They're testing materials. I'd love to see them analyze currency and coins. I mean, the order of magnitude of those, so just in our economy, are dwarfs what we do in delivery. I
brought that up at the meeting on Monday, and they found that to be a very intriguing idea. Because it is not, that affects everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that idea.
That's definitely under discussion.
They're truly, I'm sure they can spare a couple singles and some. And some coins too, but that would just that impacts everybody. You might even be able to get the banking industry, which I think is, from my experience with the banking industry, has been a cautious industry too. So they might actually, be actually interested in working on that. But those other questions need to be addressed too. I really think it's just a third of a pot is the work that they're doing.
In the chat, Percy says he had a question. I don't know if that was in relation to this or not, but I didn't want us to keep going without acknowledging what Percy said.
I apologize, guys, because I haven't been haven't been around for these meetings, but it seems like from what I'm hearing is that you guys are really looking for guidance. You really haven't got official guidance from the state exactly on what you need to get to run the library. Is that correct? That's what I'm hearing.
In terms of materials, Percy, that is true.
Yes.
I would actually say in all aspects, Deirdre.
Okay, but I'm just talking.
Right, yes, yeah.
And I think that's very intentional.
So so has anybody from the board reached out to IDPH at all? Anybody talked to Dr. Ezeki?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Has Dr.
Well, not to Dr. No, I don't know. I haven't spoken to Dr. Ezeki, but, certainly emailed back and forth. And, they're not studying materials and, the transmission on materials. They have advice about social distancing, and which I think libraries tend to be following. It's then, and this is not in any way a criticism or anything. It's just that then, you get referred to something else, if IDPH had, did I say that right? Yes. IDPH had an answer, to all of these questions. We would all know that already.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, basically what the CDC is saying is just, wipe down every time somebody touches a book, write down, have a plastic covering and just wipe it down. I really think, because we had the same problem here in Cook County with the schools and with the libraries, that we just need clear definitions from the state. And I've been trying to get my leadership here at Cook County Public Health to set up a webinar just for libraries, so we can ask the questions and hopefully get answers from the state. So
if you could do that, it would be awesome, Percy.
It would.
So I understand your frustration, because I'm frustrated over here too, because right now everybody here in Cook County is focusing on the schools, which is very important, but the libraries is just important too. And of course, we're about to go around into the flu vaccination stages for the fall. So these are the things they're really kind of focused on, and they kind of leaving all the other things besides libraries and fitness clubs and movie theaters, things like that. They're just putting that to the side, like you said, just follow the standard 6 feet distance, wash your hands, use disinfectant, things like that. So I'm not going to make any promises, but let me see what I can do. If I can get my leadership just to go ahead and see if we can set up a webinar just to talk about libraries and go from there.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So this is Scott. I think if I was just sitting here thinking about it, if I had to encapsulate it in one little nugget, my issue here, it's that we're singling out library materials versus every other surface in our lives. Like if we treated the library buildings the way we're talking about treating library materials, each time a person, whether they were staff or patron, went into one of our library buildings, did their thing, and then left, we would close the library building for 7 days.
Yes, I agree.
And then open it up, and every time one person came in and then went out, we would close the library building for 7 days. That's how we would have to treat the building if we were going to treat it as we were treating library materials. And how can life operate like that?
No, it can't.
And that's truly why I want to see currency studied, because that's, and that does just, because it does touch everyone, even though there has been a shift to, online payments, plastic touchless payments. For many of our community members, particularly those who may not be as fortunate financially, cash is still their primary, method of paying for the goods and services that they need. So, if there was an issue with touching materials like that, and materials that are definitely reused, if you've worked in a public library, you know where people store currency on their person, that it's, in issues where if there were going to be things, the currency is probably going to pick it up.
Understand that we seem to be really drilling down and focusing on library materials, the surfaces of library materials,
right.
And ignoring all the other services that are in play in the operation of libraries.
And
They're being tested as well.
Well, I know, but.
Right, but I think your point is well taken. We're not taking them the same way and people aren't getting sick. So theoretically then, therefore,
Right.
the materials won't make, but yes.
And though clearly I think everyone in this room thinks all types of libraries are one of the most important things you can do in your life, but people do spend times in other locations, restaurants, other things of that nature. So, the library materials are not the only materials that people are being touched, or they are touching in their lives.
Probably move on.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything else in your report you wanted to talk about?
No, there's a lot of reports today, so I think I'll just stop right now.
Okay. So that takes us to 7.3.2. And Ann, you look like you're out in the woods, so hopefully you can talk to us about the new L2.
Just pretending I'm in the mountains above Palm Springs for this Friday. So yes, thank you. We began the launch of L2 about 3 weeks ago, and as most of you probably already know, it's a event calendar and library directory that is used by library staff as well as the state library and library systems as, core to our operations. And the launch is going well. I want to thank the Illinois State Library for the funding, as well as all of the members of the team of folks from Rails who worked on this project. As you can probably imagine, this has been a challenging time to finish and launch such a huge project. So, I want to express to the board how valuable the work of the staff that worked on this project is, and especially Brian Smith, who just worked tirelessly, especially towards the end, to get everything in shape for launch. So without further ado, I'm just going to show you, give you a quick tour of the main stuff that L2 does so you can see it. And hopefully you can see my screen now, the L2 homepage. Someone could give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So this is librarylearning.org, not logged in. So the homepage here is fairly limited when you are not logged in. We limit a great deal of the content to authorized users, and those authorized users are people who work in Illinois libraries or consortia or library systems, or of course the state library. So we have this login screen, as well as links to the event calendar, as well as to the library directory, which you can also search here. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And since this is my account and I'm a system staff with admin privileges, you might see more in my account than you would be able to see in yours. That is intentional. So it takes me right to my affiliations. And the affiliations are important. Every person, like I said, needs to be affiliated with one of the libraries in one of the system member libraries in Illinois. So that's how we manage these, is via affiliations, and that helps control what events you can see and register for, and then also what directory listings you can see and in many cases edit. Then you also have a user, oh, that's my dashboard. But if I go into my user account, you can add a photo of yourself, a bio, links to social media profiles, and then also indicate preferences for event types and where you fall as far as target audience. And that helps the system make suggestions of events for you. So that can be a useful thing to explore. So now I'm going to go back to the home page. You may also reset your password yourself, which is a new feature in this version of L2. There's a password reset link right alongside the login screen, so you don't need us to intervene there like you did in the past. So let's go to events. I'm going to go ahead and go to the calendar. Takes you right to a search with a number of options, so you can search for and or narrow this list of events by your specific interests. But we'll look at an event listing, details about events and how to register for them are in here. Many of our events are using Zoom registration, so you may not have the ability to register in L2 itself, but L2 does offer a pretty robust registration function, as well as if you are an event manager, lots of options for editing and managing those events. And then you also have options for how you view the events. It defaults to the list, but then lots of people prefer the monthly calendar view, which is loading. Sorry, I have 2 children doing Zoom school right now, so my internet slows down sometimes. But here we go at the month listing, and then you can click and go into events from there. And if you search, it will narrow within this calendar view. So that is the calendar. We also have the library directory. But again, when you land on the library directory, you get some options to search, an abbreviated list of options to search here, and also narrow by some common preferences for narrowing, such as library type, what members of the various catalog consortia in Illinois, etc. And then a list that shows you key information about the libraries. So I'm just going to do a sample. Well, first I'll show you the advanced search, which we said throughout the project that libraries love our advanced searching. It gives you many more options by which you can search for libraries that fall into various categories. The legislative districts is a new addition in this new L2, which will be, I think, pretty useful. People have been excited about that one, but lots of options to narrow. So I'm just going to go ahead and look for public libraries that are in RSA. Show you the results list. You can see again the list of libraries. You can also download here, which I'm not going to do, but if you click this download link, it downloads an Excel file of all of your results.
Oh, that's cool.
But here I'll show you a library listing. So this is the listing for the Atlanta Public Library District building. And that's where you're going to find most of the information about a given library. As you can see, as well as their staff list. But if you're at all familiar with how libraries are kind of legally designated for us and for the state library, that there is an agency and there's a building. So this is the building listing. L2 kind of mirrors that agency building designation. So if you go into the building here, or to the agency level, there's information about the library at the agency level. The building is, the physical location with staff that work in that building. Some libraries, especially school districts, might have only some of the libraries in that district as a member of a catalog consortium or participating in eRead Illinois, for example. So that's where you would find that information at the building level, whereas other key information about the library is at the agency level. It can be confusing, so if you end up confused, you can always reach out to us. But there, again, is key information about the library, and it can be edited here. If you're a library director, you can go to the top here to edit the information about the library, as well as affiliations, which would be the staff who are affiliated with your library. And we do revision tracking in case you need to track down who made a change. So that is the library side of the directory. We also have a people side of the directory, which offers a lot of the same range of options to search. We have a basic keyword search, includes library affiliation, as well as advanced searching. So you can see that a list of people comes up. You can, if you're looking for colleagues that have common interests or sets of responsibilities, you can go into the advanced search and narrow by items like the key contact positions, which we've defined in the system, as well as type or the consortium they belong to, county for nearby folk. And then you'll get a list like we did with the library listing. An important thing to note is that you do have the ability from within your own profile to mark that profile as private. And that means that the average user won't be able to see your profile. But in order to preserve some of the key functions of L2 at the consortium level, kind of and above for library system staff and Illinois State Library staff, if you have a private profile, we at the systems will still be able to see your information. So that is the whirlwind tour of L2. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I will also point you to the helping information that we have on the website itself, some important functions, and then if you run into a problem that this documentation can't solve, this form will reach a whole set of Rails staff who can then address it for you. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have, and I will stop my share.
That looks great, Ann.
Thanks, Scott.
I really like the feature, this is Becky, of the people's interests. I think that's a really great way for, because I've been part of Illinois library groups that were trying to, we used L2 to market our programs. And now we actually can have a way where we could tag it so those people will see it. I think that's going to make it so much more useful for staff to find training that that's going to be useful to them.
Yeah, that's one of the ways we kind of modernized the calendar.
Okay, thank you, Ann. And now we'll go to the State Library. Gwen?
Good afternoon again. This is Gwen Harrison at the Illinois State Library, and I've got a few things to report to you. There are 3 programs that are being developed in the administrative rules. The Card for Kids program legislation actually is effective now. It was enacted in Public Act 101-0875 to provide free library cards to non-resident kindergarten through 12th grade students whose households fall at or below the U.S. Department of Agricultural's income eligibility guidelines. The rules are still being developed here. If you are presented with a situation to offer the Card for Kids and you have a question, contact the State Library or Rails. Public library boards may take action to offer e-resources to non-residents. We are aware that there are school districts that don't have a public library service area within their boundaries. With remote learning the new normal in so many school districts, this only allows non-residents to have remote access to e-resources. And next, a veteran with a service-connected disability of at least 70% is exempt from paying property taxes on their primary residence. Rules are being developed to align the non-resident fee with the property taxes exemption and to clarify that public libraries should not charge a non-resident fee to to veterans with a service-connected disability of at least 70%. If you have more questions about this, I would suggest that you contact Joe Natale, the Deputy Director at the Illinois State Library. We have several grant offerings at the State Library. We have the PPE, the Personal Protective Equipment grant for Illinois Public Libraries. There's a quick turnaround on this grant. They're all due in by September 30th, and we're going to be reviewing them. Expenses from July 1st through December 31st are eligible for reimbursement up to $500 per building. We also have the Digital Network Access for Illinois Libraries. It's providing up to $10,000 per agency to improve the capacity of public and school libraries and community colleges. And we also have the Back to Books grant. It will provide up to $4,900 per agency to purchase books in any format for the library's collection, and this is targeted towards public and school libraries. eBooks grant. During the state's closure, the regional library systems reported a significant increase in patron registrations for ebook access. To ensure that an increasing number of residents and students have direct access to ebook collections, Rails, IHLS, Chicago Public, and Carly are applying for a $100,000 to $125,000 for ebooks. This should allow the broadest access possible to Illinois residents by focusing ebook purchases at the consortia level. School library grants are still being accepted. We're really in the throes of a lot of grants, and they are due October 15th. The Public Library per Capita and Equalization Aid grant application is expected to be available this fall. We are looking at extending the due date. The application will align with the Serving Our Public 4.0. Family reading night materials have been created and will be shipped to libraries over the next month in time for this annual event, which is November 19th, 2020. We are not expecting libraries will offer events, so please use these materials as you can best promote reading. The original intent of a family reading night was for families to turn off their TV and their devices and spend quality time reading together at home. Tried Illinois will start October 1st, and it will run through November 31st of this year. And that concludes my announcement. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Next, we have new business. Jim, I think it's in your court now. On the annual audit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tom. We've just completed our first audit with our new auditors, Lauterbach and Amen. The audit went well, and you have been we've sent a copy of the annual financial report to you, which will be part of our annual report submission, which will be early next week. We have Jamie Wilkie, the partner on our job, to present the financials to you. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Thank you, Jim. Can everyone hear me okay? Right.
Yes.
Also going to share my screen so we can, hopefully in a much more easy fashion, walk through the audit. Does everyone see the annual financial report in front of them?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank Jim and certainly the rest of the Rails staff to go through a first-year audit in the middle of a pandemic, obviously brought about some of its challenges, but you know, I agree with Jim. It was a very successful first-year audit with Rails. Great cooperation with the staff. They do an outstanding job in their preparation for the audit. We actually had no auditor detected journal entries, so for that to happen in a first-year audit.
That's amazing.
Yes, obviously means the staff really did an outstanding job in their preparation. So I certainly want to thank the Rails team. As we take a look at the actual annual audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, I do want to point out just a couple of key areas within the document. And then certainly we can open it up for questions at the end as well. So starting on pages 1 through 3 of the annual report, you will find the independent auditor's opinion. As part of our annual audit, we are required to assess basically the numbers in the financial statement. So are they correct as presented? We are also required to take a look at the internal control environment. So can we rely upon those policies and procedures put in place to ensure the accuracy of those numbers? We have issued at the top of page 2 in the opinion paragraph what we call an unmodified or clean audit opinion. That is the highest level opinion that Rails could be issued. As I said, as part of that test, we are looking at the internal control environment as well. Certainly if there were any red flags, findings, areas of concern, we would have to bring those forth this afternoon. We are happy to report there are no such findings, so truly a very clean audit process. We flip just a couple of pages, you'll see a section labeled Management's Discussion and Analysis. This section covers pages 4 through 11 of the document. And as the title indicates, this section is in fact prepared by management. As time has gone on, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, has been very active adding new pronouncements and standards. And so, our financial statements in theory have gotten longer and longer each year, it seems like. Pages 4 through 11 really are intended to be the executive summary to the audit. We do encourage all of our boards, if you read nothing else in detail in the report, I would encourage you to read this section in detail. You will find key figures and results for the year, overall trend analysis and comparisons to the prior fiscal year, and discussion of the position of Rails capital assets as well as any related long-term debt activity. So I just wanted to point out a couple of key items here in the financial highlights section on page 4. As part of the audit, once a year, we are required to convert the financial statements to what we call full accrual financial statements, which would include all of the long-term activity and all of the funds of Rails. So that would be including capital asset activity as well as long-term debt activity such as your IMRF pension obligation. When we go through and do that exercise, we get an increase or decrease in overall net position or equity for Rails. For June 30th, 2020, that was actually a surplus of roughly $74,000. So overall positive operating results. I mentioned IMRF, and there's a couple of key highlights related to that within this section as well that you will find. IMRF, you guys actually stand at 110% funded. So that is technically not a net pension liability on the books right now. It's actually a net pension asset. So that is also outlined within this section. I know Jim mentioned earlier, and the number hasn't quite shifted since June, there is a 14-month cash reserve on hand in the general fund for the fiscal year ended June 30th. Certainly you will find discussion throughout this section on COVID impact as well, to both the revenue streams as well as the expense side of the equation. And I did just want to point out that the general fund did in fact have total expenditures under budget for the fiscal year. So really just covering a couple of those financial highlights that you'll find on pages 4 and 5 of the annual audit. Flip a number of pages to page 12, which really is the start of our basic financial statements. So I covered some of the high-level results for the year. All of the detailed financial statements and related note disclosures can be found on pages 12 through 37 of the document. I was not going to go through those in detail, but certainly want to point out that section of the report as well. As we flip a few pages past our basic financial statements, I know I mentioned the IMRF pension obligation and just wanted to point out a couple of key figures related to that. Page 38 provides your funding history. So what did IMRF tell you to put into the plan and what did Rails actually contribute to IMRF. You'll see in all of those years, the contribution requirement has been met. And so there's the historical information provided. And then I mentioned the 110% funded in IMRF. You'll see that reflected on page 40 of the document. And just remember that IMRF's figures are always published as of December 31st. So we do have kind of that 6-month lag from your fiscal year end versus IMRF's fiscal year end. Page 41 through the last page of the document, page 51, will provide the budget to actual comparison schedules, as well as the detailed breakdown for the sub-funds of the general fund. So that being between administration, the LSAP, and the delivery functions. So again, I was not going to go through those in detail, but certainly if you're curious what actual results look like in comparison to the budget, you'll be able to find that information again on pages 41 through 51 of the document. As I said, it was a very clean audit process. We did provide one kind of housekeeping management letter comment that really relates to an upcoming Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, pronouncement. That is GASB 87. I know many of our libraries will be addressing that as well independently at their own entities. And that statement relates to the way we report leases. So it's really informational only, nothing to do at this point. We still have some time for implementation, and we'll be working internally with the Rails staff to determine kind of that financial impact going into the next fiscal year, and then really implementation year after. I'd be certainly happy to answer any questions this afternoon, or Jim, any other key highlights that you maybe wanted to mention.
Nothing really on the annual financial report. And Jamie, were you going to mention the single audit then?
Yes, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. So we are in the process as well in wrapping up the single audit. The single audit is required for those federal funds expended over $750,000 on an annual basis. So we will be in the process of kind of finalizing that report with Jim and the team here. We're basically in final draft mode, just kind of ticking and tying those final pieces. So we will have that forthcoming. We don't anticipate any changes at this point, and certainly we'll have that well within any filing deadlines and requirements.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jay. I do have one other comment on the annual financial report. It's one of my favorite statements, and it's early in the report. It's called the Statement of Activities. And this statement gives us a recap of our revenues and expenses by our type of activity, and it shows things like delivery and the LSAP contributions and the money we put into the LSAPs. And so it can give you an idea of the size of the various programs that Rails embarks upon. So I would encourage taking a look at that one also. Otherwise, this is part of the annual report, and there's probably some presentation on that, and we will be going ahead and issuing this with your acceptance. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank
Are
you
there
both.
any questions of the board? Any final things? Okay.
Just to clarify for new board members in particular. So every year, September 30th, our annual report is due to the state library. And that annual report consists of, that was probably about this thick. A lot of it is the audit, but there are a lot of exhibits and appendices that are related to how many buildings we own or lease, how many, how many vehicles, the staff. I mean, there's all kinds of information. We only bring to this meeting for discussion the audit and the narrative report, but it's all available to you, obviously. Yes.
So right now we need a motion for acceptance of the audit report for FY 2020.
That is true.
Yeah, I saw that too. I'll move, Becky, that we accept the audit.
Becky?
I'll second.
Scott seconds. Emily, will you please call roll?
Yes. Ellie Cox,
Yes.
Christy Harris,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny, Chris, you still with us?
Don't see Chris.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna Noek-Luisi,
I'll see her again.
Jeff Boynton,
Yes.
Becca Stratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Peppin,
Yes.
and Alex Francina.
Yes. Okay.
There they are.
There's Chris Canning, she's back.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Now it's the annual report.
Pardon me?
Now it's.
Yeah, so I am going to take a little bit of time and just draw your attention to some of the activities and projects that Rails undertook this year. This is really one of the few times that we actually look at the whole year like this. And just to remind everybody that at the same time, and of course the libraries are doing the same thing, at the same time that all of these projects were going on, we were also, dealing with the whole pandemic. So it's been quite interesting. On page 2, this is arranged by our strategic plan goals. I just want to draw your attention to the Explore More Illinois and how much that grew in just a little over a year. 264 public libraries statewide and 32 statewide attractions. Unfortunately, that has been suspended, but we're hoping that the museums will begin opening again soon. There's some description of the LSAP support on the next page, page 3. In particular, I want to point out that we did offer 6 grants to libraries to join, that will be joining or are in the midst of joining the LSAPs, which is, really important way of expanding resource sharing. Continued to offer cataloging training, one of the most basic things that libraries do, and we're glad that we can do this for, across the membership, irrespective of what platform you're on. Page 4, delivery. I want to stress that we are always looking at ways to either improve delivery service or make it more economical. And we are contemplating, we did an RFI related to automation and outsourcing that we talked about a few months ago now. And we are contemplating another, an actual RFP in the not too distant future to look at possible outsourcing. As you know, this has been part of our multi-year delivery plan. And then, on page 5, there is a description of some of the things that we did related to delivery and COVID. On page 6, you'll see a discussion of the e-read program, which has really has grown this year in a lot of ways because of the pandemic. Also launched Inky this year, which is a way for local authors to create their own books. A lot of public libraries have really liked this. Let's see, over on page 8, you'll see a list of some of the deals and discounts that we put together this year. Starting on page 9, there's a lot of information about the meetups and the online groups and forums and communication. I mean, we've really, I mean, the member meetups, and especially the one that we did for trustees, that was we had about 700 people. It's really been, it's been great. I mean, I really think that, I know a lot of people have said this. I don't know what as much as Zoom can drive us crazy, I don't know what we would have done without it. I really don't.
And I also think that, you know, you talk about things to learn from the pandemic, because we talked about this at our last board meeting, because we were forced to transition and pivot in a faster way than we normally do as an organization or as a profession. We've learned really positive things, that people will be engaged if there's a reason.
Right.
So we just have to keep building off that.
Very true, yeah. Then some conversation starting on page 10 about the whole My Library Is campaign, which has really been successful. It's been adopted by all different types of libraries. The talking points that we did in conjunction with ILA to some extent, and I think have really been appreciated by school libraries. Speaking of school libraries, over on page 12, there's more about what we did with ILE this year, working with ILA and IHLS on Bigger Than a Building. Then on page 13, the proposal that we initiated to establish statewide funding for online databases, and that we were, certainly a partner in putting forward the need for possible funding increases in the per capita grant funding, which ultimately has been funded, and libraries school and public libraries will be seeing that. Even with all the pandemic, et cetera, we did have 62 CE events, 6,500 attendees in FY20. Continued our statewide FOIA and OMA hotline. We have a lot of programs that we actually have pushed out statewide, including this one, and a lot of trustee training. Let's see. Directors University we've been involved with again. This year was also a big year for data. There's data you'll see throughout this. Grant Halter has been amazing in what he's helped us do related to data about libraries during COVID, or helping us evaluate the pricing of deals that come in, or that we get from vendors, and negotiating more effectively with them. Consulting visits that Grant has paid to some libraries to help them do some of their own data analysis. And then there's the census on top of all that. And we did hear just today that maybe the count is going to continue through October, but our program will end at the end of September. We did have a very positive meeting this week with some of our local legislators who were affiliated with some of the subrecipients, so we could present to them the work that libraries have done. And it was Amy De La Fuente led that, and it was great. There was all kinds of great photos of activities taking place at libraries. And at the end, Representative Catherine Willis was on the Zoom call, and she said, if you want something to get done, you ask a librarian to do it. And of course, she is a librarian, so.
She's fantastic.
So that was wonderful. And then, let's see, then we have started our EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative, and we did have a great meeting with our consultant, our climate team, I think at the end of last month, and really looking forward to that. Universal Service Committee on page 19. We haven't met for a while, but I do think we've made some progress with the e-resources card that the State Library is creating some rules for, as well as the Cards for Kids Act. And I think we are, the use of intergovernmental agreements. I think all of these things, they're small, but it's moving the project forward, the service forward. What else? Done a lot more with social media this year, 30% increase this year in engagement. And I did put an editorial comment in on page 24 there up at the top, just saying that I'm really, as I read through this and through, reports throughout the year, just amazing what the Rails staff has been able to accomplish under pretty difficult circumstances, that they've kept all the regular stuff going, and then also managed to really respond to some huge challenges. So I just want you all to know I'm very proud of the Rails staff.
Hear, hear.
We finally, thank you. We finally finished the handbook. And then L2 you heard about, and what I also want to add about L2 is that while we did get very generous financial support from the State Library, which could not have happened without that, I can't even begin to tell you the number, although I suppose Ann could, of hours of staff time that Rail staff has put into this to make it all work. I mean, I haven't talked to Brian Smith in weeks now, because he's devoted to that project, and at this point. So I don't want you to overlook that. Of course, IHLS did as well, but this really has been on our plate for the whole time.
I think that really shows that the product looks wonderful.
Pardon me?
That really shows that the product.
Yeah, it does. It shows you what we were putting up with for all those years, so. So anyway, I hope you'll read through this more thoroughly, but it's really been quite a year for Rails and for all of us. So happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions, may I have a motion for approval of the narrative report as part of the Rails FY20 annual report to be submitted to the State Library?
So moved, Sarah.
Second, Hallie.
Hallie seconds. Emily, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Billy Cox.
Yes.
Percy Harris.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Chris Kenny.
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Jenna Namek-Luisi.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Beth Teppen.
Yes.
And Alex Encina.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do we move on to 8.3, membership change? Dan Bostrom.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm here to ask for your vote on a recommendation of membership for Arbor Park School District 145. The district is located in Oak Forest and Tinley Park. It contains middle school and 3 elementary schools. I spoke with Maureen Facco last week. We spoke over Zoom. She's working from home right now, but the district is planning to reopen soon. And I think actually she's like the perfect person for this, for her district, because she's worked in public libraries in the past. She has worked at I believe at the Lamont and the LaGrange public libraries. And now she's obviously in school libraries. Before she arrived, the district didn't have any full-time funded library staff. I believe that they had some part-time folks, but she's the first full-time person in quite a while. I don't know if they used to be a member of Rails, but we're trying to do this fairly quickly because the deadline for the school district library grant from the Illinois State Library is October 15th, and she would really like to be eligible for that. And she's also interested in being eligible for eRead Illinois, and of course, having access to continuing education. So can I answer any questions about this candidate library?
No, but not for me, but it's thrilling to have a school actually, a positive direction. It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, may I have a motion to approve this school for full membership in Rails as presented?
Don't move. This is Jenna.
You might want to make that motion, Jenna.
Okay, Jenna. And let me finish this out here.
Sorry.
Request final approval from the state library, from the Illinois State Library. Moved by Jenna. Can I have a second?
I'll second it. Chris
Okay,
Kenny.
Chris seconds it. Thank you, Chris. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sue Busenberg,
Yes.
Nellie Cox,
Yes.
Percy Harris,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Dana McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Peppin,
Yes.
Alex Messina.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Motion.
Thank you.
Motion carried, and thank you, Dan. That gives us to 9.1, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative.
Yes. I have a couple things. So somehow, stupidly, I did not include the word diverse in the charge previously. So put that in. That is the extremely minor change. Also, Michael Campbell and I talked and agreed that it would be appropriate for him to ask Diane Hollister to chair the committee, as it was she who made the original suggestion to have the committee. Diane has happily agreed, or I'm happy that she has agreed, to chair the committee. So I'm happy now. We can, I think, begin to start to move this forward a bit more. I did share this charge with our consultant as well, the executive team. We've looked at it a couple times. We're happy with it. We have a chair, so if we could get the charge approved, we could put the call out for member library participation and get going. So I leave that for you to decide.
Is there any questions? No? Okay. May I have a motion and a second for creating the EDI committee and the draft charge as amended?
I'll move that we create it. I was waiting for Diane.
Becky moves. Can I have a second?
Second, Alex.
Alex seconds. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Becky. Emily, will you please call roll?
Busenberg,
Yes.
Nellie Cox,
Yes.
Percy Harris,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Dana McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Peppin,
Yes.
Alex Messina.
Yes.
Motion is approved. All right. That takes us to number 10, board development. We're going to be talking about training, networking, and engagement opportunities for Rails board members. And Joe and Percy are here to help us out on this.
Sure. Thank you, Tom. And good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you all. So while the focus of much of our continuing education consulting is to support the staff at our member libraries, we certainly recognize that library trustees, board's trustee members like yourself play such an important role as advocates for the library, as policy setters, and to position the library for long-term success. So we want to do what we can to provide opportunities for our library trustees through different training and consulting support. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the things we do within Rails, and then I know Percy, in his role on the ILA Trustee Forum, will say a few words about what ILA does in terms of supporting trustee learning. And I think to just make clear maybe some of the resources, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so you can see what I'm talking about today. Just bear with me one second here. I don't have to tell you or remind you that trustees are volunteers. You are all volunteers, of course, on this board. So we're all well aware of the challenges that are presented in getting trustees to attend any kind of in-person training when you look at the fact that you have jobs and all the other responsibilities. So we try to offer as many things as possible in an on-demand online format for trustees. One of those, and I will open up our trustee, excuse me, my lights in my dining room are freaking out. I'm just going to, so if you go to services on the Rails website and under trustee training, you'll be able to find these things that we're talking about. Rails actually, going back several years ago now, actually helped come up with the concept of short takes for trustees, which are short recorded trustee training that could be used hopefully as a springboard for further discussion and further training on certain trustee issues. Then, of course, Trustee Academy, which is a series of online courses that go into a little bit deeper. So particularly because we help develop short takes for trustees, we have statewide access for all trustees that want to access these videos. And I'll just show you some examples. It's really a great resource, I think, particularly for onboarding trustees, these kind of bite-size, not going into great detail, but as I said, for serving as a springboard. And I know in talking to libraries, a number of them use these videos and maybe show one at each board meeting and then have some conversation about them, which is really great. And what we were hoping to have happen with these. And then, of course, the Trustee Academy, which are those lengthier videos. And look at that, this course is led by our own Deirdre Brennan, so we even have some involvement on that front. But again, these are going to a little more in-depth than the short takes for trustees. So again, those are all accessible to you as trustees and to all of our trustees and members across Rails and also Heartland Libraries. We are wanting to support the trustees in that area as well. Going back to the Rails trustee training page, I would also highlight the events and the trainings and the recorded webinars that we put on this page that we offer to our membership, both as live webinars and then when we can record them and access them through the archives, we put them in here. And I won't go through all of them, of course, but you can see that topics include, what trustees need to know about the various sunshine laws, certainly budgeting, levying, and then obviously some of the more kind of recent events that trustees need to know about, like the census. And as I go through here, you'll see some of the COVID-19 content that we obviously had to go really heavy on beginning in May for our members and by extension for all of you and for our trustees. So again, if you haven't been here, I encourage you to explore this page. These are all accessible to you as trustees. Beyond that, and I will stop sharing my screen here to mention a few more things. We also get a lot of outreach from library trustees, and as much as we can, we try to do training, offer support when a particular library or when a trustee reaches out to us. So, for example, we, just some more recently, Dee and I were both involved with a library onboarding that they were doing at the Quincy Public Library, where we remotely, of course, attended their onboarding session for new trustees and talked about not only Rails, but trustee responsibilities and what it means to work with the director and so forth. Just a couple weeks ago, I went to the Deer Creek Library that was hiring their first director in a lot of years, and really no one on the board had gone through the experience of hiring a director, so they wanted to be, wanted someone to come talk to them about that and what to look for in a trustee. So it was my first time dusting off the keys of the Rails car and driving to a member library, which was great, and meeting with the board and talking to them about that. And also the networking groups. We support networking groups, and from time to time I get a request to come and talk at an event that they focused on our trust for their trustees in that area. In addition to the online, obviously in normal times, we try to do in-person training for trustees as well, because we know that the networking component is important. We have a good relationship and have worked with Nancy Sylvester for a few years, who, if you don't know Nancy, she's done a lot of training through ILA. She's a not only experienced working with boards, but is also a parliamentarian. So she can talk about both the trustee responsibility aspects, but also all the motions and all the parliamentary procedure that goes along with being a trustee. So we usually offer about 3 or 4 of those in-person workshops a year. They're half day, usually on a Saturday, and held in different locations. And just to wrap up, just as we want our members to contact us, just as our phone lines are always open, and you might say to our members, they are to trustees as well. And we get contact from trustees, whether it's myself or Deirdre or Monica or Mary or Dan or any number of Rails staff, with specific issues, specific things they're struggling with, things that they are looking for answers for, and we try to provide that support when we can. Can you guys all hear me? Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my sound just got weird. So we try to answer those questions, provide support, and make connections for them when we can, and as much as we have the capacity to do. Finally, just moving forward, we'll always want to provide training and support so that library trustees across our membership are informed. So whether that means around these sunshine laws that we always, as trustees, have to be informed about, but also those parliamentary procedures, understanding board responsibilities. But we have to be responsive just as we are to our members. So as the implications and the fallout of this pandemic and what it means for libraries, that's what trustees need to know. So we will continue to offer that kind of training. And then finally, the Cdi Initiative. We've established this as a priority for Rails. Obviously, there's a board committee. And as we look ahead in the next year and wanting to support our members in this area, we can't leave library trustees on the sideline for that conversation. They have to be in that conversation as the entity that sets strategic priorities for the library. So they need to understand why we think this is important. So we'll be working towards that with our consultant and anyone else that we bring in for training. So that's what I wanted to say about Rails. And then now, Percy, I'll turn it over to you to say a few words about ILA. And then after Percy does that, happy to hear any of your comments or questions for either of us.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So for the new members who don't know who I am, my name is Percy Harris. I will be taking over as the president or manager of the Illinois Library Trustee Forum, LTF. The purpose of the Library Trustee Forum is support the provision of library services for all people in Illinois. There's 6 responsibility 6 responsibilities that we are responsible for. First one, of course, is to educate library trustees on behalf of libraries they represent. We're also supposed to do activities and programs benefiting library trustees and libraries carrying out the purposes of the forum. To promote the library trustees, to encourage participation in trustees in the forum of the Library Association. Representation, number 4 is representation. It concerns the interests of the library trustees within outside the library profession. Number 5, support the legislative advocacy program, local, state, and national level, which is ALA. And of course, interaction and support of library activities with regional and national level when appropriate. To be honest with you, we have not done the last 3 in quite a while. I'll take that back. We haven't done 2 of the last 3 I just mentioned. We're a very small forum. We're supposed to have a board of 15. We're down to 8. We're in the process of right now of recruiting new members to the trustee forum. So we're trying to rally our troops so we can be a full forum or full board, you might say. Some of the things, well, let me take a step back because I like to say this all the time. So in November of November 2020, I will be taking over as manager. The running joke is that I will be impeached by the 3rd day. I do. If anybody knows me, I do think outside the box. So, so just hold on. So just hold on. Things are going to change. Hopefully for the better. So that's the running joke right now. I've been part of it since 2017. I was voluntold, like some other organization, somebody just told me I had to be part of. I think it was something called Rails. I was voluntold and be voluntold to be part of ACT. So I've been voluntold to be the manager, and I'm happy to be the manager. Right now, I'm kind of behind. If anybody don't know what my real job is, I'm the Deputy Chief of Cook County Department of Public Health. So I'm kind of like, if you can see in my expression on my face, I'm kind of being beat up right now between COVID. We're in the middle of a move and some other things. So just if I'm talking fast or rambling off, please, someone just throw something at your camera so I can stop talking. Okay. Some of the things that we do in the ILA Trustee Forum, we are responsible for Trustee Day at the ILA Annual Conference, which is also coming up next, I believe, oh my goodness, I'm losing my mind. It's coming up next month. It's supposed to be, yeah. It's this year's, of course, is going to be a virtual concept. But we are responsible for the training on Trustee Day. Trustee Day is the only day that library trustees come. I have been on a couple of ILA conference committees. I've always been pushing that Trustee Day should not just be a day. The trustees should be engaged in all of the events. It's hard enough, and like Joe said, it's hard enough because we have other jobs and other things to do. But I think that for the trustees, I think the trustees need to know what the library and library workers are doing, and vice versa, what the trustees are responsible for. I think that's one of the things I've been trying to push since I've been part of ILA, that we expand the Trustee Day and add more programs during the rest of the conference so everybody can be involved. Another thing that we're responsible for is the trustee training workshops. We have one twice a year. We have one in Springfield and we have one in Oak Brook. Last year in Springfield, I mean, not last year, this year in Springfield, we had smaller numbers than we had the year before last because of COVID. This year for Oak Brook, we did a virtual workshop. But these workshops are basically just to give especially the new trustees, a chance to come in and start asking questions like, for example, how do you run a board meeting? What if you get a FOIA? How do you respond to staff? One of my favorites is your staff are deciding to create a union. What do you do? Things like that. So those are the kind of workshops that we do at the ILA. The other thing that we also engaged in is legislative meetups. This is something that if you see in the ILA reporter, we have these legislative meetups with the librarians and with the trustees, and we sit down with our local officials, and we go through anything that's dealing with the state to ILA at these legislative meetup. It's really just a good chance just to sit down and just talk to your local elected official to find out anything that's going on and make sure that they understand how important libraries are to your area. Another thing that we do is we do have a newsletter. We do have an e-blast that goes out to all the trustees who are members of ILA. This is usually quarterly. It is called the Trustee. I want to change it to something else, but they're not going to. Trustee. Actually, if I can share can you guys see my screen?
No.
No?
No.
Hold on one second. How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay. So this is our newsletter. This is the Trustee. This goes out quarterly. As of right now, Kathy Cahill is still president, and she will be president until next month. I mean, not next month, till November. As you can see in our letter, we talked about many things. We just selected our ILA Trustee of the Year, which is Dr. Ronald Rogers. He will be receiving the Trustee of the Year award at our virtual conference. As you can see, we also talk about the virtual conference. We are begging for trustees to come on and join our forum. Like I said, right now we have 8 currently board members. We're looking at going to 8 to 15. That's what our statute said we can go up to. You can apply on our forum website, which I'll go back to in a minute. And we talk about certain things, like I said, the trustee webinars and things like that. And then down here, of course, we're in our newsletter, they talk about this sexy guy right here who's about to take over in November. So this is what we do. You can go to this through our ILA Trustee Forum website page, which I'm going to click right here, which you can see. Basically, all the information that you need to know about, like I said, from running a board meeting, recorded trustee webinars that we have done in the past. Everything is right here on this page. I'm going to try to clean this up too. Let me see. And I think that's about it. I think that's basically what we're doing right now. There are some things that like I said, I think outside the box. There's some things that I want to do. In fact, in our last meeting, we really want to reach out to more trustees, basically in Southern Illinois, because majority of our members right now are in the northern part of Illinois. So we're really trying to reach out down south. There's some things that I'm going to try to implement. One of the things I'm going to do, and I'm going to take something from Rails, is I'm going to try to start a podcast where we interview trustees from different locations throughout. So like I said, I'm trying to think outside the box, but then again, why reinvent the wheel? So that is it for right now. Stay tuned. Like I said, I'll probably be impeached by November 3rd. So just any questions?
Well, we hope not. I was going to say, yeah. I just want to say, Percy, this is Becky, as a now 20-year library trustee, I have been begging ILA for better trustee training for years. And I am so happy to hear you say things like, I want to shake it up. I want to do things differently. That's what we need, 100%. The other thing I wanted to share that maybe you could look into, last month, some of you knew I ran in like a few minutes late to the meeting. I was actually providing trustee training for Wisconsin trustees. And what they do every year, and they've done this forever, this was pre-COVID, 1 week in August, and you can look on the Wisconsin Library Association page, they do a week of lunchtime trainings for trustees.
Okay.
And they do it, it's an hour, and they are strict. It is from 12 to 1. I was the last person, and my job was to talk about how you walk that line as a trustee, speaking as a trustee and a library staff member. But they had speakers from all over the country, and they do it for 1 hour every day for a week. And they got huge engagement, and they always do. And I thought that that was a really great sort of training to do and a way for you to even recruit more people to help do things, so. But I'm excited for the Percy era to begin.
Well, I'm not. I'm just.
Oh, and I had another thing, sorry. You mentioned about staff need to know more about what boards do also. I actually just submitted, I checked with Cindy Robinson before I submitted it, but I just submitted the first ever Reaching Forward proposal for a training geared at the boots on the ground library workers to teach them about what the board does.
That's a great idea.
And how to get involved. So maybe the Trustee Forum will end up sponsoring it or something, but because I think that that is a place where there is, and you mentioned it, so this is going to be great.
Yeah, because the only time that I guess the staff actually see what's going on the board when we do that mock board meeting, and you know they come in, they sit down, they observe that, and it's funny and it's hilarious and all that good stuff. But then they leave out some intricate parts of what we actually do in that board meeting. I mean, is some people just think is kind of like this meeting, like, oh, you guys just get together and just talk about stuff and you prove stuff and then you just walk out the door. And like, no, it's a lot more, especially
Wait a minute.
like see, there I go, I'm talking, see, I'm about to be impeached already. So you know, it's like, for example, my library, we have a union now. Our library staff is unionized, and one of the programs I want to push out is, you know, what if your library becomes unionized? What do you do? What will the board? How the board deal with it? How do you go through contract negotiation? There's just a lot of stuff that the public don't know. They just see from the outside in, looking in the window, like, oh, okay, here you go. So there's like I said, there's a lot of stuff I would like to push through ILA, and hopefully. Well, hopefully Cindy will listen to me. I don't know, Cindy might not listen to me because she hasn't listened to me yet. So maybe since I'm now president, she'll kind of listen to me. So we'll see.
I'm going to text her now. Listen to Percy. I'm not kidding.
So is there any other question for me, for ILA, or for Joe?
I just wanted to add, this is Diane. Thanks to Joe, last fall I approached him concerning an update of our forms. We needed an instrument to update our evaluation for a director which we do annually. The one that we had was rather old, and so I tapped into Joe, and he pointed me in the direction of what other libraries had shared, and it helped us a great deal.
Great. I'm glad it helped, Diane, and that, truly, whether it's trustees or staff, it's a lot of times just pointing to resources and what other libraries are doing and using and so forth. So,
absolutely. Thank you very much. Belated.
Glad to hear it. Yep.
Thank you, Joe and Percy. Great information. And we're on to number 11. Now's the time for board members can share any news about your libraries.
This is Diane again. This isn't so much about my library. It's just, I just wanted to tell you that I'm looking forward to becoming engaged in the EDI committee. I'm already beginning to tap and patch into the experiences of other libraries and their successes and where they're at right now. I mean, there's a huge continuum, so I'm going to try to jump on as I can and try to read and synthesize and get as much knowledge as I can. I've already reached out to Bloomington, and they're including me in their monthly meetings, and I'm also reaching out to Peoria Public as well. I had heard today, I had heard recently, this past week, that the ILA board had a speaker, Jody Gray from University of Minnesota, who is very knowledgeable about the EDI, and I hope to track down some more information, and maybe she has something on YouTube. And also this afternoon, I heard about, I want to watch a video on YouTube called The Cage of Oppression, and it's put out by the local YWCA, and it provides a lot of the definitions that I will need for the EDI committee as we begin. And there's just so much to consider. I told Deirdre the other day, it's like eating an elephant, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to pursue EDI topic and creating a more equitable environment on either side of the desk for library employees and our patrons. I still haven't gotten used to calling them customers. I never will.
I don't call them customers.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Diane.
And thank you for the muting, because my dog and cat have been driving me crazy.
Anyone else have any news about their libraries? If not, okay, then let's go on to agenda building for the next Rails board meeting. The next board meeting will be held on Friday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. We will have the Rails quarterly consortia reports, the census grant report, and the school library report from Jenna. Anything else need to be added to that agenda?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay. Well, if nothing further, thank you all for your attendance, and I hereby adjourn this meeting at 3:09 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.